A swimming pool can smell clean before you even see the water. You walk into the building, that sharp chemical smell hits you, and your brain reads it as safety. Chlorine, disinfection, clean water. But that familiar pool smell is not the smell of a clean pool doing perfectly fine. It is usually the smell of chlorine after it has already reacted with the things swimmers bring into the water: sweat, skin oils, dirt, cosmetics, and yes, urine. So the strange part is not that dirty water smells bad. The strange part is that one of the most trusted smells in summer is often a sign that the pool is working harder than it should. Chlorine is added to pools because it is extremely useful. Its job is to attack germs and help keep the water safe enough for lots of people to share. But chlorine does not enter a pool and magically disappear after cleaning everything. It reacts, and every swimmer adds something for it to react with. A person gets in the water with sweat on their skin, oils in their hair, sunscreen on their body, tiny particles of dirt, and traces of other organic waste. The pool still looks blue, the surface still sparkles, but chemically, the water is no longer just water plus chlorine. It is a crowded reaction space, and that is where the smell begins. The sharp smell people call chlorine usually comes from chloramines. Chloramines form when chlorine combines with nitrogen-containing compounds from swimmer waste, especially sweat and urine. That means the smell is not free chlorine waiting patiently to clean the pool. It is chlorine that has already been used in a reaction. That is why the smell feels backwards. A perfectly maintained pool should not need to announce itself with a strong chemical odor. The stronger that classic smell gets, the more it can suggest that the pool has a buildup of combined chlorine, poor ventilation, heavy swimmer load, or not enough freshwater management. In plain English, the smell is not the pool bragging about being clean. It is the pool giving away what it has been fighting. This is also why indoor pools can feel so much harsher than outdoor ones. Outside, air moves, the smell can disperse. But indoors, the air above the water can trap those irritating compounds, especially when the water is warm, crowded, or constantly splashing. Every kick, jump, and lane swim agitates the surface. More chloramine compounds can escape from the water into the air. That is why the smell can hit your nose before you even reach the pool deck. It is also why people sometimes blame too much chlorine when their eyes sting or their throat feels irritated. The problem is often not that the pool is too clean. The problem is that the chemistry in the air are telling the same story. Too much stuff has been brought into the water, and the system has to deal with it. The obvious answer sounds simple. If the pool smells dirty, just add more chlorine. But that misses the point. Chlorine is part of the solution, not a magic eraser. A good pool has to balance disinfectant levels, pH, filtration, fresh air, water circulation, and swimmer behavior. That last part is the one people ignore. Showering before swimming is not just politeness. It reduces what your body adds to the pool before chlorine has to deal with it. Not peeing in the pool is not just a childish rule. It directly changes the chemistry everyone else has to breathe and swim through. The pool is not a private bathtub. It is a shared chemical system, and every swimmer becomes part of that system the second they step in. So the next time you walk into a pool and smell that sharp, clean smell, the better question is not how much chlorine is in here. It is, what has the chlorine already reacted with? That does not mean every smelly pool is instantly dangerous, and it does not mean chlorine is bad. Chlorine is one of the reasons public pools can exist at all. But the smell people trust is not the smell of purity. It is often the smell of chemistry under load. The cleanest pool is not the one that smells the strongest. It may be the one that barely smells at all. If you want more small things with big reasons, subscribe.